All right, we're just going to give a minute or so for folks to join. And as people are joining, I'm just going to put up a quick poll. Folks can answer, and then we'll get started in just over a minute. All right, for folks that are just joining, please take a minute and answer the poll that we've put up there. We're going to use that feedback from you to make sure that we're focusing our content today and we're calibrating it properly based on our audience. So you should have the poll popping up on your screen. If you don't, go to the little poll button and you will see it there. And we are going to do what we always do, which is honor those that come on time and get rolling right away. So I see lots of people joining, which is great. Great to see people taking a little bit of time. I know it's July and it's a nice day and that sort of thing. But it's also a great day to talk about data. So the topic of our webinar today is Data Fuels AI, how OneLake and Power BI can set you up for AI adoption success. So before I get into it, I'm excited about the topic today. We've been talking more and more about data with more and more people lately, and it's really such a big part of AI. That not everybody, I think when we started talking about it, people were thinking about it as separate things, and folks are starting to get a little bit more that it is a critical piece in getting to be AI ready, AI focused, AI driven. But before we go any further, I just wanted to introduce my fellow panelist presenter, Selby Coates, who's our team lead of our business intelligence team here and resident data genius. Selby, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
It's great to be doing a webinar with you. Selby was also presented at our recent AI summit in June and took folks through a whole bunch of the data and business intelligence parts of AI readiness and AI approach. And so for those that are new to our webinars, what you're going to see today is about a half an hour of content. What we try and do with our webinars and our sessions is to have a half an hour of content and followed by a Q&A. I've been on lots of webinars that are half an hour of content stretched into 60 minutes to fill a space. We'd rather just get in, get out, give you the information you need, and then we'll stick around as long as there's questions. So if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A panel. You can put them in the chat, whatever you prefer. Depending on the question, we may answer it as we go along. If we don't, we will come back to it at the end of our session. So one other housekeeping note, we are going to take a little break in August from our webinars. We do a lot of business planning over the summer. Our fiscal year ends the end of August, and a lot of people are on vacation in August. So we figured it's a perfect time to not have a webinar. And because we are powered by data, we've looked at the data, and our webinar attendance in August is generally relatively low. So our next webinar is going to be in September. We will be launching a new slate of webinars and topics moving forward into the fall. And for all of you folks on our email list, you will be receiving that prior to September. So you'll get a good heads up about what we're going on next. The purpose of these webinars in this series that we run is to try and take complicated technical topics and distill them for business leaders and executives to be able to action them and keep abreast of what's going on with technology. and understand the technology landscape. So here's what we're talking about today at a high level. There's five stages according to a great piece of research that Ipsos did that was commissioned by Microsoft. There's 5 stages of AI readiness. You can be exploring, which is very early stage, planning, implementing, scaling, realizing. And what this graph just shows is obviously the further down you are in your AI readiness, AI implementation, the more value you're getting out of it. And the other important bit that this research has is at a high level, there's 5 drivers of AI readiness: business strategy, technology, data strategy, AI strategy, experience, organization, and culture, and AI governance. And so what we're talking about today is that technology and data strategy, particularly the data strategy, because here's the deal with AI. Data fuels AI. So if you think about, hey, I want to take, there's so many business leaders are out there and saying, okay, how do we take advantage of this great AI technology, generative AI, and different opportunities to automate that are out there? How do we take advantage of it? Well, think about it in terms of data is the fuel for AI and cloud infrastructure is the engine. So you need to make sure you have fuel. You need to make sure you have a good engine. And we don't have regular gasoline to power a rocket ship, right? So we need to have great fuel. So we're talking about that fuel today. And the reality of it is AI requires a lot of data. In order for AI to work effectively, there needs to be a lot of data. It is data dependent. It needs to be able to ingest, analyze, and the more data it has, the better. And there's some risks with that we'll talk about, but there's also huge opportunities. The other bit of context that's super important is there is so much data. There's been this huge explosion of data. You can see from this graph what the volume of data, and this is in zettabytes, which is, I don't know, Sally, do you know what a zettabyte is?
Yes, I do. A zettabyte is about 1 billion terabytes or 1 trillion gigabytes. In practical terms, if we took 1 terabyte in a zettabyte as a kilometer in distance, we would be able to travel to the moon and back about 1,300 times for just 1 zettabyte. So that's quite a lot of data.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot of data out there. And one of the fascinating things is we create apparently 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. Every day. So that means 90% of the data in the world has been generated in the last 2 years alone. Can you imagine like this explosion of data? All right. So we have all this crazy data. And I think what most business leaders sometimes sit back and say, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we could just come in the morning and with our cup of coffee and just have all the information we need at our fingertips? So we can take a couple minutes and we can just kind of say, what's the part of our business or our organization that we need to spend time on? What's really happening? What's going on? And give it to me in an automated, easy way, right? That's the dream. That's the vision. Hey, that would be great. But here's the reality. There's this huge data disconnect, right? We have Salesforce or HubSpot data in one place. We've got our ERP over here. We've got our finance application over here. We've got stuff in Microsoft 365 and in Excel. And there's all these different bits. And then we're like, hey, let's have an HRIS. So we get a Bamboo HR, an ADP. And so now we have another data source. And this stuff is just all over the place. And then what the cloud computing, I don't know, revolution or evolution led to is you have all these SaaS companies. They're like, I can solve your purchasing problem. I can solve this problem. I can solve this problem. But it created all these different pockets of data all over the place. And now people are like, okay, I have all these applications and I have data in all these different places, but it's not talking to each other. And so it's a big problem because we're spending so much time switching back and forth between these different applications, and we don't really have great data. So what we're talking about today is what's a good data and AI strategy look like? So Selby, take us through this visualization a little bit.
So data is one of our most valuable assets. And what is very important when we look to our data is to make sure that it is sorted in a structural way so that we can make sense of all of the business insights that is contained within that data. So that is one of the most important parts when we look to creating a data and AI strategy. After we've sorted the data, we need to arrange it in a way and create relationships between all of our data sources so that when we look to the future, we can make sense of what might happen and forecast reliably. So when we have the data sorted and arranged, we can present it visually. And one of the tools that we will be talking about is Power BI. Presenting it really makes it more easily interpretable because you have visuals that you are able to depend on for the data interpretation part. And of course, we do all of this to be able to explain with a story. The story is what it all comes down to. We wanted to explain the past, the present, but also the future.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, like we have conversations internally a lot that like we went on this process over the last year. By we, I mean kind of Selby did this all for us because she was really good at it. But we took 50 different data sources that we had, all these different applications that we use. Like we use stuff for cybersecurity, for 365 management, for computer management, all this sort of stuff. Took 50 different data sources and brought them all together. And now our team can look at this data, but you don't want to just take the data and say, a number is a number. It's like, what's the story behind the number? So let's go in. There's kind of, what did we come up? I think we came up with 6 different things that in order to put together a good data strategy, there's 6 things that we suggest. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how to put together a data strategy, and then we're going to show some use cases. So both the sort of strategy and then the actual tactical implementation. We're going to give you a bunch of ideas, and hopefully you'll walk away with some good thoughts on what to do. So number one, we need to set a goal and understand our data sources. So what is it that we want to achieve from our data? So in our business, we wanted to have automated data, all of our metrics, dashboard information in an automated way that could serve the basis for analysis, right? And then we looked at how many data sources. We had 50 data sources. We're a little bit crazy, we're in the technology business, but a lot of people have 5 to 10 data sources that they would look at. So you start with, what's your goal? What are you trying to achieve? And where does your data exist right now? And then once you have that, then you go to step number 2.
Step number 2 is data centralization. So in this step, we really try and solve the data disconnect. So we try and make sure that we are integrating all of the data sources and having the data be stored in one central location. We strongly recommend OneLake, and OneLake forms part of the Microsoft Fabric platform. And what OneLake is really is just a storage unit that will store all of the data that you have across all of your stakeholder and business related platforms. And what's so fantastic about this data centralization platform is the fact that you're able to plug this into any and all data and BI related platforms in the Microsoft universe down the line. So we try and go for that.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 things that I really like about it to add to that. One is you can either have your data resident in OneLake, or you can link it. So you can link different applications. So we don't have to be like importing and doing all sorts of like tasks and bringing in importing CSV files or stuff like that, right? You can just link live data, which is really great. And the other bit is it's within your Microsoft platform, so it has the same kind of security, the same kind of firewalls, that sort of cybersecurity structure that you've built up. It's there, and that I think is really important. What else, Selby?
Ensuring data accuracy. Of course, if we're making our business decisions based on the data that we have centralized, we need to make sure that that data is accurate. And there are a few strategies that we can use to make sure that the data is accurate. A general rule is the more manual intervention that you have within your data-related strategy and consumption of data, the more data accuracy checks you would need to build in. So of course, here that really speaks to rather integrating and making sure that you're consuming data from source and then only transforming at that point in time. But in terms of ensuring data accuracy, we can build in automated checks that alerts us if data does not seem to be aligned with what we expect it to be. And that could be anything from an email alert or a Power BI dashboard that really highlights if there are any inconsistencies.
Yeah, and it is amazing. It's a really good point. Like the more opportunity for human intervention there is in data, the more potential for people making changes to the data or manipulating things or having a different perspective. We also need to make sure we secure our data. So here's what good data best practices for data security looks like, right? We're going to be building out all these data sets. We're going to be bringing together. Here's what it looks like. We have to encrypt the data. We have to be detecting anomalies and know, is there something weird going on? Is there a concern? If you're dealing with huge data sets that have personal information, data masking is really important. So data masking is basically stripping out the personal information, like somebody's name or that sort of stuff that you have in your data set, because then if that data ever gets out, there's no personal information in there. And you've protected people's data. And then we need to use AI in terms of automated threat response. So humans are not fast enough to pick up attacks most attacks are run by AI. So we need AI to be responding to those attacks and protecting our data. So then once we've got the data secured, we've got it cleaned, we need to build a toolbox to do something with the data, right? So Selby, tell us what that looks like.
This is one of the most exciting parts, I think, of going through the data strategy, is identifying the platforms that you really want to use in your data toolbox. So that might be a visualization tool. It could be an AI-based tool that you would like to use as an assistant to help you interpret your data or to even help you build out reports for the data. And there is a relationship there between the AI capability and functionality that is founded on top of the data. So kind of creating a toolbox of fun and interesting platforms that you're able to use on top of the data that you've centralized.
Yeah, and if anybody that's interested in shiny objects and wants to get a little excited, we're going to show you this Copilot and Power BI at work in a minute, right? So we figure out, just to kind of summarize, we're going from what's our business strategy, where are our data sources, we're coming through, we're making sure that the data, we figure out a strategy for centralizing it using OneLake, we clean the data, we secure the data, then we build out our toolbox for how we're actually going to use the data, and then we're going to move on to developing and iterating, right? And this is a process of, hey, we get some quick wins, some quick reports. We can automate something that people were doing manually. And we can start to build a little bit of a culture around data and around what we can use with data. And then we can have that sort of platform available to plug in AI to it, which is what we're about to show you. So we're going to spend the rest of our time today talking about different use cases and showing you some examples. Again, if you have questions about anything that we've said so far, or as we go through and look at these use cases, please put them either in the Q&A panel or the chat, up to you, and we will make sure that we answer. So Selby, let's talk about our first use case.
Our first use case is using Power BI as a visualization tool based on top of OneLake related data in the finance space. So we have a financial reporting dashboard or application here that really is quite solid in terms of all of the data that it's bringing in from the ERP related sources. And it's giving a lot of visualizations and giving a lot of insight into how the specific sample company is doing at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think like you talk to most business leaders, they're like, where am I? Give me my data, give me my reports, give me my metrics, give me my financial information, that sort of stuff. The visualizations here are really interesting. This is just an example. And the amount of data and what you can do with it is really quite neat. All right, you ready for the next one?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
There's also a functionality within Power BI that allows you to create scorecards with the data sources that is available in OneLake. And here we have an example of objectives or KPI related items that we have that relate to either a report based on how many projects a developer has completed or how they're using AI. So we can pull in AI usage related metrics and make sure that that is part of the adoption across the business in the form here of a scorecard.
Yeah, so a lot of basically most businesses have metrics for people or departments, right? But sometimes the challenge is like I find that the challenge is getting the information to people to know how are we doing. This is a great example of how we, across our entire operation, we built out scorecards for everybody so that we can see how we're doing. We got customer service scorecards, what are the feedback we're getting from clients, all that sort of stuff. And it's in like Power BI creates a great visualization. And it's like once you have that centralization, as you said, of data, then you can just access it through Power BI and you can pull it out. All right, so that's our Power BI world. So now we're going to go into a little bit about Copilot. So why don't we show our Copilot use case now?
Yes. So Nikolai, inspired by Nikola Tesla, is our company vehicle booking tool. So this data is based on geographical data, map data, how quick you might go through a route, but it plugs into Outlook. So it allows the users to book the company vehicle for a specific day. It also uses Copilot Studio integrated with OneLake to be able to pull in the data, but it uses the AI or the Copilot related interpretation and large language models to be able to help and enforce the actions that it needs to take.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have heard about Copilot, likely heard about it. There's various versions of Copilot. So we've done a bunch of webinars about Copilot. We can always point folks to different Copilot. There's Microsoft Copilot, which is your web-based, kind of closed, secure way of using the GPT engine and using generative AI and using the internet, right? It's what Bing Chat has evolved in, Bing Enterprise Chat has evolved into, and it's a great way for you to safely use you and your staff to use generative AI. And then the next kind of level is Copilot for Microsoft 365, which is where folks take Copilot and have that GPT engine, that generative AI engine, and have it use it both for the web and their 365 environment. So all the data within 365. And then this version, creating your own Copilot, this is another step. This is where you can take a specific use case and say, as Selby said, we're gonna use all that technology, but we're gonna use it for a specific thing, right? So in this case, booking a company vehicle. Right. We've also used it for HR manuals, HR questions, standard HR questions. We've a bunch of clients that have implemented this, that they have these HR manuals. And then instead of people calling the HR department saying, what's our vacation policy? What are we doing about this? What are we doing about this? They will implement the Copilot that will essentially in Teams as a chatbot answer all these questions. And the data source is the HR manual. So really, really cool technology. I'm just sorry, Selby, I was just excited about it. Just wanted to talk about it a little bit more. All right, what do we have next?
The next item is to illustrate how quickly you might be able to set up your own Copilot. So here we are using a very simple source. It is a website. It is our website to be able to set up a Bot, which is a bot that we can use internally if we want to interrogate our own website. So this really just takes a few, I would say, a minute. and then it's able to, using the large language model that Copilot is built on top of, to index all of the data that is on our website, allowing us to ask whatever we need to, and it will find an answer very quickly. So it really just illustrates how efficiently you can go about creating your own Copilot.
Awesome. All right, and I think we got one other example, right?
Yes. So here we are able to extend the functionality of Copilot for Microsoft 365. So we have spoken about centralizing all of our data. And if we want to use all of that data in Copilot for Microsoft 365, we can. And we can do that by creating our very own plugins. So the next few slides really is to show the expansive nature of Copilot Studio and all of the sources that you might be able to use, including OneLake, which is to then expand the functionality. If we go to our next slide, we can also show that you can ask Copilot for Microsoft 365 to act as something else. So we have an internal plugin that allows us to have Copilot from Microsoft 365 act as an IT specialist with 5 years of experience. And then Copilot will actually go ahead and ask those related questions, etc.
Yeah, and this is neat. This is really neat because when like people ask us, okay, we've got Copilot. Sorry, I was jumping ahead there a little bit. We've got Copilot. We like Copilot for 365, but we also have this ERP data, or we've got the CRM data, or we've got this other application, and we would like Copilot to be able to speak to those data sets as well. And this is a fascinating way to be able to give you that information back. And use that AI power and that analysis and that sort of thing to help people work better and faster.
Yes.
And there's this huge opportunity that we have out there to basically make people 40% more productive, right? Harvard studies have shown with generative AI and with the AI opportunity out there, we can support our teams and make them way more productive. And that's why all these companies are figuring out, how can we leverage AI? How can we use AI? It's why getting the data part right. If you don't have the fuel, you run out of fuel, the engine's not going to function properly, right? So please remember, data is the fuel, cloud infrastructure is the engine, and those two pieces are so critical to adoption moving forward to AI. So the other thing that I want to point out, which I think is really important, is so many IT departments, IT people, IT companies look at things in too much of a reactive way, right? And one of the things that we think is it's really expensive to be reactive about your IT. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to show folks that the IT world and dealing with an IT company or IT partner shouldn't be just some kind of reactive spiral where there's an issue, it disrupts work, it's solved, and it repeats over and over again. Like, support tickets and support requests are not going to allow you to adopt AI and not going to allow you to use the proper data. And so we believe really strongly in an approach that when we identify issues, so if an issue is data and having data all over the place, and having it not able to create dashboards, not able to do proper analysis, not able to set yourself up for the future, that's a challenge with how people are working. It's a challenge around productivity. So we come up with solutions for this sort of stuff, and then we create best practices standards. So we've got standards for how to set up OneLake. We've got standards for how to use Power BI, how to extend Microsoft Copilot, standards for how to adopt Copilot and Copilot readiness. And that's how we take IT to be way less about reacting and way more to being strategic and being proactive. And it's based on aligning things to best practices standards. And when you identify misalignments, then you can judge them against a business impact, and that's how you create really strong technology strategy. And so that's how we do it. That's how we get folks ready for AI. We do it through a series of rhythm of what we call monthly techification visits, quarterly strategy sessions, and all of the usual IT stuff in the background. But the sort of superpower, the fuel behind what we do is close to 1,000 best practices standards that we have, including a whole bunch of data and AI best practices. And our team is constantly looking for how do we align folks to those standards? How do we get them moving along? How do we build out a really strong technology roadmap for that data strategy and for that AI strategy and for implementing that kind of strategy? So we appreciate everybody that's joined this webinar. We want to give you a way to walk away and implement this stuff too, and move it along. So we've got a AI readiness assessment that we do. The way that it works is you take this QR code or you go to our website and type in that, depending on whether you want to use automation or not, totally up to you. We're cool wherever you are in your journey towards automating your business. But here's what we're going to do. We will, when you say, hey, I would like a AI readiness assessment, we'll book some time with you. We will send you a discovery form that'll be between 20 and 25 questions about your technology environment. And with those questions, we put it into, we consult our robots and have them digest that information. And then we can tell you where you are kind of on your journey and what's going to stop you from creating a really good AI strategy, right? Are you using an ERP system that has a closed infrastructure that is not easy to access the data, right? Are you using some on-premise infrastructure that's going to be hard to access and manipulate the data and that sort of thing? So we'll hop on a call with you, half an hour, 45 minutes, and run through at a high level. Here's how this data strategy would look for you and for your business. And here's how that would flow into an overall AI strategy. So we've done it a whole bunch of times for folks. We're happy to do it. We're happy to do it for free as a way of introducing our business and how we work and giving people a little bit of a intro to how we work. So please, if you're interested in that, you can sign up. And the other thing you do is you just reach out to us the old-fashioned way. You can call, you can email. That's okay. We're good with that. And with that, I think it's question time. So just as a reminder, feel free to put questions. So I see some questions in the Q&A panel. I see a question in the chat as well. So feel free to either post in the chat or post in the Q&A panel. So here's our first question. Copilot gets data from lots of different sources. So will we be able to eventually eliminate OneLake? This is an interesting one. Selby, you want to take this question?
Sure. Short answer in terms of what I believe. No, I do not believe that Copilot or the usage of Copilot and its integration capabilities will eventually eliminate the functionality that lives within OneLake. And I think the reason there relates to the storage capability of OneLake. So of course, when you integrate directly with Copilot, you are relying on Copilot's integration functionality to be able to pull in data. Of course, you are still using to a certain degree the large language models that is provided by Microsoft in Copilot, but that would be limited to a certain kind of extent. With OneLake, you are able to store all of your data, integrate all of your data, transform the data, build reporting on top of that data, build your own large language models on top of that data, use it for machine learning. So I do not think that it will eliminate OneLake.
Awesome. So just one of the things I forgot to do is just give some feedback on our poll results. So I'm just looking at our poll results and the folks, and please keep the questions coming. I just see another one that's just been popped in the chat. Selby, we have 0% of people on our webinar that are using OneLake. About a third are using Power BI. And 5% are using both. So we have a small number of people using both OneLake and Power BI. We have almost a majority of people using Excel, which is not surprising, right? A lot of people use Excel for their data. And over 70% of people have data in all sorts of different places, which is consistent with what we're seeing across the board. We're seeing this sort of data, and we frequently hear from people like our data is all over the place. Okay, let's get to another question. Our initial challenge with testing Copilot for Microsoft 365 is that it relies on Microsoft Graph indexing limits for a connector, like, for example, Atlassian or Jira. So with only a few test licenses, we can't see its true potential since it only indexes like 500 items. So Jason is saying this is a challenge. So I'm kind of reading into this a little bit that I'm assuming what Jason is saying is it's a challenge to see what it's fully capable of, because if you don't have all of your Jira users, if you don't have access to all the data. So it's like, how do we test it with this limited number of licenses? I don't know, Selby, what kind of approach would you take with that?
I would explore Copilot Studio's functionality, especially if there is an integration requirement with Atlassian or with Jira, because you can create your very own plugin that will then deploy to Copilot for Microsoft 365. And when you enable that, you will be able to interrogate Jira and Atlassian, not necessarily via the indexing that you are trying to utilize, but rather via the plugin that you can deploy via Copilot Studio. But I'd be happy to provide a bit of insight and guidance if you need.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because instead of having to, so Copilot, like if you get Copilot for 365, you get licenses, they're $42 each a month, $42 a user a month. And if you have 50 or 100 people or 150 people, and lighten up $42 a user a month that can get pretty expensive. And we've gotten around that with a bunch of, like, if it's single use cases, you don't necessarily need that Copilot license, and that makes sense. Jason, hopefully that answers your question. Looks like it did. Okay. And we're happy to help. Reach out, as Selby said. That sounds like a fun challenge to attack. We've got one more question on security that I see is in the Q&A panel. Let me just open this up and come back to it. So if we put all of our data into the same place and we centralize it, doesn't that open up a lot more of a security challenge or a security concern? Because instead of having little bits of data all over the place, now we have it in the same place, and now somebody can access kind of everything. Okay, it's a fair question. So here's what I'd say about it, and this is why we talked about those security best practices. Security of your data is really important. We will see in a lot of cases when folks have these different applications all over the place, the security is weaker because maybe they're not all with multi-factor authentication. Some of the applications might not have MFA with them. Sometimes people have really weak passwords because they have like 16 different passwords that they need to remember, right? So there's this potential, there's this huge potential when our data is all over the place that our security is all over the place as well. But if you can bring it centrally, if you can bring it into the Microsoft universe, the Microsoft platform, Entra, which is part of Microsoft 365, is really powerful cloud-based security. So it has all sorts of capability to better secure these applications. And then it also secures your identity, your access to OneLake, who's able to have access to what the security policies are, how it's protected, all that sort of stuff. And there's amazing capabilities like Microsoft. I think a lot of folks know Microsoft has invested billions and billions of dollars into security, into privacy, into compliance, and they have all sorts of stuff that you can kind of dial into. And at a small business or small organization level, it's really democratized this sort of stuff, because it used to be big businesses, only big businesses would have access to the kind of security, the kind of privacy, the compliance. Now all of us can just basically, I know it's not quite this simple, but turn it on. And we turn that functionality on for folks all the time. And it's really quite amazing how much you can really improve security. Selby, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add to that on the security front.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there.
All right, cool. I think we have answered all of our questions for today. Awesome. Well, we appreciate everybody joining in July, and a sunny day in July. It's always great to talk about data and talk about the fuel for AI. Selby, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, everybody have a great day.